Hi, this is Peter. Welcome to Entrepreneurs Anonymous, where we talk about the challenges and opportunities of being an entrepreneur in South Africa.
Hey guys, my name is Nathan Smith.
Hi everyone, my name is Nandi.
Hi, I'm Felix Brendel.
Hi, my name is Heather Others.
Hey yo, what's good? It's your boy Lord Lucretius.
I'm a freelance videographer and aspiring documentary filmmaker. I specialize in event, brand engagement, a bit of fashion, and then music.
I'm a freelance photographer. I'm also award-winning fun contemporary photographer. Currently, I'm delving in fashion photography where I work with fashion brands, as well as model agencies.
I'm the divisional head of the laboratory by Tetrad Group. We're a brand strategy consultancy with a deep focus on audio-visual production.
I'm a marketing consultant and I specialize in social media.
I'm an artist from South Africa, specializing in conveying the human condition through poetry and arts.
Yeah, we're gonna move on to the next thing, and now we're talking about money.
Yeah.
So this is I'll tell you my story once we've got the frame the question, but it's about what do you how do you value your time? How do you decide when the first time you go out what you should be charging a client, especially when you're trying to build a portfolio or get a reputation? Or the mistake I made was that I'd left a 9-to-5 regular salary check, and then I went and did kind of contracting. It's essentially what it is. And they said, what's your rate? And I just took my old salary and I was like, divide by, that's my rate. And they're like, sure, deal. And then I met a guy who actually runs a freelancing platform for professionals. And I said, what rates are the other people charging? Like double. Like,
No ways, that's the worst.
So like, okay, that's why they were so happy. But, so, I mean, that's the lesson you learn. And if you don't know, you don't know. So, I mean, I'm curious about, like, the first time you went out, how did you know what to charge for your first?
I have a good story that I can relate to.
Okay, cool.
Because that was always a very difficult thing to do, because I always thought that my expertise were not that valuable simply because of my history. So dropped out of high school, didn't do anything, had no degree whatsoever, just hustled.
Shucks, dude, you like went cold ham and turkey.
Yeah, the story I can elaborate another time, but like it is just completely random. And I was driving to, so my history was nightlife. So I basically organized clubs, etc., and then started doing marketing for clubs. So I'd get paid for them. And I was driving to a club one day, and my dad is broke, and he's driving me there in this old panel van, Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, like this rust bucket kind of thing that we're heading. And I had a laptop, I had saved up for a laptop, and I'm going there, and I'm like, I need you to drop me off for this meeting. It's like 9 p.m. and we're heading to this club because I'm meeting the owner of the club. And as I'm driving there, I say to him, okay, so I've done packages because I researched, and like that's the way you do it, tiered packages, right?
Yeah.
One was $1,000, one was like $2,000 or 2.5, and then the other one was like 4. And my dad's like, no, dude, double it. And I'm like, no, man, I'm not going to get this business. I'm not going to get this guy's going to tell me to go away. He's like, double it, double every single one of them. So then I went to $3,000, $6,000, and $10,000 or something like that. And now I'm like 17 years old or something like that. So I'm like, he's like, if you can't get this, I'll pay you. I'll pay you the first month. I'll give it to you. Obviously, you wouldn't have never given me that. Good motivation. And I'm like, okay. And there was a principle in that. I saw that like value yourself. Like this is still business. And I've always seen everything as like a personal transaction. So I'm like, okay, cool, double it. And then as I'm going through the presentation, as I'm at this club, I'm like showing the guy. I by mistake. I don't know how I was doing it. I was exporting JPEGs and then compiling them to PDFs because I was using some online designer because I couldn't afford Photoshop or whatever. And I, by mistake, had the last package, the Premier package, the Diamond package or whatever, come up before the others.
Yeah.
So I clicked onto it and I'm like, oh, yeah, so this is the Premier package, but I wanted to show you the other ones because I wanted to get him to the top of the lower one or the middle one or whatever. He says, cool. I've seen it, this is all I want. And he literally takes that, I think it was $10,000, whatever, takes $10,000 cash from under the desk, counts it, slaps on the table. It's like, get to work.
Oh
and I was like,
goodness.
brilliant. There was back then, there was no invoicing.
Tax-free.
No, of course, I took all of that and I drove to SARS and I dropped it off there.
It sounds like he was rinsing some money there.
Tax
I suppose
evasions and
there's like a principle there in that you have to value yourself and you have to do proper research on what people charge. Because I always thumb sucked, and that would be my recommendation to anyone. Like, understand what the market is charging, and take some risks and say, listen, this is what I charge. And I think don't do it from a value. I personally disagree with this whole thing of I deserve it and I've put in all the years. Now, on a person who's on the business side, I don't care. I don't care if you've got 5 years.
Tell us more about that.
And your mother did this for you, and she helped you with this, and
that's
she
what you have a
bought
mom
you your
for,
first
that's
SD card. Yeah, I'm in business, and I need to run a profit too. So I don't need to hear your sob story of how you got there. Like, this is what I'm willing to pay. This is what I need to do. Of course, me as a person who hires suppliers now, I'm much more. I try to be different and listen. But generally, you need to know that what you're charging, or what you charge, is based on the value you might be able to add to your customers. So I would almost backtrack and I would calculate, if I did this for them, how much return on investment could they make on that? And use that to quantify. So I would say to them, if you don't do this with me, if you don't endeavor on this project or this idea that we had, this is how much money you're leaving on the table.
Potentially,
And that's my story of billing.
And Nathan, yourself?
I think the biggest mistake I made going, just like freelance in general, is quoting per project. It's because you end up trying to satisfy people.
I'm never saying that.
And much like your story, I think people also take you more seriously when you charge them an actual rate.
Yeah.
And that's kind
But
of...
that has to be backed up, right?
Yes, definitely. You have to be able to justify every single cent. And that's not something that you necessarily have to do, but a lot of corporates, they're not just going to willy-nilly throw
So
a
something
massive contract at you.
I've noticed something now on the other side as a person who hires a lot of contractors, people, etc. I've noticed that some people have just started charging because that's what the market charges, or that's what they should charge. But then you get their work, and generally I have, like, automatically when I ask them for a quote and it's X price, I'm like, yo, okay, now these guys know what they do. This is serious money. And then they do it, and I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? They're like, no, well, that's what I deserve. It's almost like this
Entitlement.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And I think that's a little bit dangerous. You do have to really, really back it up and know that you can compare yourself with some of the other people that are charging.
Well, I mean, I think a good rule of thumb, because I've been on the buy side as well, is that you should never as the buyer feel at the end of a thing that you've actually been financially screwed over.
Yeah.
So I think and there is always a middle ground, because what's enough for you is going to be in the range of what's not screwing over for them. And if you go beyond that, and it's like, cheapest, I actually paid 850,000 Rand for this thing, and it just
I think also maybe getting people to understand exactly what you're doing and the amount of work that's going in. So in my case, I found, social media was a buzzword, and a lot of people didn't really understand what work it entailed. So I would give my quotes, but then explain, like, this is strategy behind it, this is implementing the strategy, these are how many hours that would go into a strategy, and then you've got community management, you've got all of that, whereas people kind of think, I log onto Facebook and post a few
caption,
things, and I'm done for the day.
My teenage daughter does it for free.
So corporates weren't really a problem, bigger clients, but smaller clients didn't really understand. So I'd be like, this is the amount of work, this is why I'm charging, and here's like a portfolio, so to get that.
But I mean, another thing, I mean this I won't name names, but on the corporate side, there are a lot of grifters you would have seen it.
What does that mean?
Like, they're just ripping the ring on, they're milking corporates because they've got some kind of a relationship already. And I mean, I've been in situations where I was saying to you, and one of my previous employers was, we were buying they were doing all our social they were doing all our social media buying, but like paid search display, targeted stuff. And I was running a business at the time, and it was a lot of money, and they were taking 10 or 15% margin on what they spent, and so their target was, what's my budget? And I was like, I don't know, R1 million for X period, and they said, well, they're going to walk away with 150 grand. I said, but wait, what's my outcome? They're like, no, we buy ads. But you can buy ads, you can spend too much money doing this. Like, it was just an actual grift, because it wasn't there was no repercussions on how many impressions are you going to give me? What's my conversion rate going to be? What's my cost of acquisition? Like, no, we just do the buying. So basically, you got no incentive to actually do it well. Your incentive is just to spend as much as you can. So you
there's
get your
no
commission.
guarantee.
There's no guarantees. There's no reporting on it.
So I also, the thing is, but I also have found, because I've been on both sides, and maybe I'm a cheapskate, that might be my DNA, but I've always been quite, when I look at quotes coming in, big corporate ones, I'm like, no, you're mad. You're mad. It's just, and that's not when it's hour-based, that's normally project-based. So maybe they're doing it because clients are exploiting them, but it'll be...
There is an element of the, so when I did research, I looked at hourly-based costing, which we perhaps do for like development work or something like that, sometimes makes sense. Value-based costing. But then I do believe that there's nothing wrong with charging a bit, not exorbitant prices, but charging more for because their return on investment is bigger, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a mom and pop shop and you're doing, let's say, graphic design work for them, and you're charging them £5 a month, you can charge the corporate 15 because their return on investment on what you're delivering for them is larger. So I think, and that's where you said the corporates do your homework. The corporates also, I mean, that's what we did, fund your growth. So you get them, and you don't charge them disgusting fees, but you can charge them more. Use that money because you're not always going to have those tier one, really big accounts. Use those and reinvest in the business, but that you can redistribute it. With
the other thing is, in the corporate side, the cost of a rand is different to a mom and pop shop.
Exactly.
Sure.
And the point being that I think, let's say you need a basic marketing, like you need a splash page for a campaign, right? So an agency might charge you 50, 100,000 rand for like a basic
Just
splash.
a landing page.
Don't.
Well,
That's
It
ridiculous.
can happen.
In the defense, it's a lot of work.
It is? Okay.
SEO, proper research.
But my point being is that the small guys might just actually go get a Squarespace account and spend 1,000 rand and do it themselves. It won't obviously be nearly as good as the pros. Oh no, you never know. But that for them is that they would work a weekend to not drop 100,000 rand because that's worth so much. I think it's that because they're also owners, and often your corporate buyers aren't the owners; they're just employees. So it's part of least resistance stuff.
So I don't want to backtrack, but on something that you said. So I mentioned earlier that one of the biggest mistakes that I was making was quoting per project. And that was a big mistake, mainly because of the types of projects that I was quoting on per project. For bigger productions, you can't just charge your full day rate because you are going to be bleeding money. So I think it's definitely important to be mindful and kind of budget beforehand of what does it cost for you to get in your car? What's your gear cost? What's your time worth? And that, like putting a value on your time is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do.
Let me let you go first, but I've got a point on what you were saying.
Do you want to finish on that quickly?
So,
while we add it,
if I may, I think what I've learned is, at least this would be my encouragement for those who want to build something more grandiose than just themselves. Which was always my aspiration. I always wanted to do something. I didn't want to be alone. And I can't overstate how do I say, grateful I am to be we're 10 people now, but we're in total with the rest of our teams 120 people, and to sit in a room with everyone where you actually enjoy what you do and you're having fun is like, what the heck, this is insane. So to get to that, I would recommend one thing: positioning yourself always as an expert and not as a laborer. And we often do that way too often, where we say, yes, okay, well that's a half day shoot, that'll be then $4,000. But what if it goes back to how you do your work, in always positioning yourself as someone who solves the problem. You're not a photographer. You're a person who allows these people to communicate the emotion through a visual product, content, this visual content. And that has to do with a lot of the way you speak. So naturally consult when you're speaking to people. So that allows you to charge way more, because if you have done that homework for the past 10 years and have become so good at it, eventually you can do the work that they require in 2 minutes when it'll take a more amateur person 5 hours. But does that mean you can only quote for 2 minutes now? No, and that allows you to scale.
Yeah.
And then you just charge your expert fee. Like, I'm an expert, but again, that has to be backed up with an expert has to deliver expert results as well.
Yeah.
I think also the moment you start working with these bigger clients, you're also inclined to do more work, like value add, something that they didn't necessarily ask for, because you feel like they're investing in you, so you're more willing to invest your time into them. And like you mentioned earlier, sometimes you end up paying for something and you're not necessarily happy with it. And I think as a freelance creative, one of the biggest defining factors if you're going to make it out there is how you handle that. I screwed up, but you know what? This is what I'm going to do to fix it. Like how you bounce back, because just having a client, a once-off deal, that's a waste of your time, literally. Yeah, sure, you're making 15, 20K now, but wouldn't you rather build a lasting relationship, hit a retainer, something that you know, cool, I might not be making 20 grand right now, but there's 10 grand a month that I don't have to worry about.
I've been surprised as to how many people don't understand that.
It's absurd, dude. Like, it's such a waste of time. But I think that's like a bit of the marketing thing in my head. It's just like you don't want a one-time buy. One-time buy is a waste of time.
But I really appreciate what you said about being able to bounce back, because when you're in a work environment, you make a mistake, there's a bit of a, not a safety net, but you make a mistake.
And
you
there's
know,
somebody
you
to
go,
take
yeah,
it.
I've made this mistake.
Yes.
Where when you're a freelancer and you have these like kind of once-off relationships with these people, it often feels like you make a mistake, it's the end of the world, and you've ruined this relationship. And I've just kind of blocked that out of my mind and went to people and say, listen, myself, or when I was a freelancer, I've made a mistake here. I'm really sorry, and I know this is going to affect you. And put a contingency in place. Say, I won't charge you next month. I'm not going to charge you for this piece of work. Please let me fix it.
Yeah.
And there will be people who are just like, you don't know what you're doing. They say, get out of here. But there will be a lot of people that
appreciate that you owned up to it, actually.
100%.
And they're more willing to work with you.
100%.
as well.
Yeah, we're all human. You're not going to be 100% perfect every time.
True. And would you say that the clients that you've like messed up on, but still found a way to bounce back, that actually adds on to your relationship, because you're showing them you're not perfect. However, you have their value in mind, regardless. So even if I fail to come through this time, I'll always make a plan to make sure that your product is unaffected. You know what I mean? Then on that topic about value,
I actually want to ask that, as a poet, I know writers charge per word, or is it per letter? I don't know.
Per word,
they charge per word.
Commas are more expensive though.
And full stop. Don't forget the question mark.
What about Oxford comments?
How do poets and musicians, obviously royalties are another conversation, and streams, but before you guys make the song and all of that, and before it goes being distributed and all of that, where do you guys get your money from?
alright, cool.
Do you get me?
Yeah.
Like, how do you guys generate income, let me say?
Yeah, so normally it's shows, brands, like royalties, so forth. But during COVID, there were no shows, and I'm not like famous enough to where I have a bunch of royalties coming in 100,000 a month, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I found a new way of kind of creating my own income, which was through features. So a feature is basically when, say that my brother Pizza has a song, he just put out his first album, you know? And he's like, man, if I got Lucretius on the remix, this song would change the world, you know?
Yeah.
I can charge Pizza for my presence on that song.
And that's a once-off payment?
It's a once-off payment, but we can also say, okay, as the song grows, I want
Royalties?
like 5% of the song, like for my part, etc. But the tricky thing about that is, until you have a large group of people saying he's worth millions, it's really up to you.
Especially music.
Especially music, and it's up to your level of confidence, right? And for a while, I mean, I came from charging 200 Rand a feature, it's like 15,000 Rand a feature in like a year, right? And that's just because there's really no set parameters besides your own confidence, the quality of your work. And the hardest part, to be honest, it's not that it was harder to make money at the beginning, but I wasn't working hard enough to feel like I deserved the money. So I wouldn't even try.
Imposter syndrome.
Because the work instills the worth. You can't charge someone for 100,000 if you know I'm kind of doing this on the weekend.
Yeah. But Peter's talk was just talking about grifters just now.
Yeah.
And how they just milk and ask for big budgets and all of that.
So it's actually good the way you do it, because you slowly but surely prove it to yourself and also to the people that it's actually worth it paying them.
Exactly, and the benefit of that is you start to get creative. As human beings, we have something called the reticular activation system. What this means is that your mind is like a search engine. If you give it options, it'll find ways to do things with those options. Prime example is like, if you're in a fight with your man or woman, you can only remember the bad things they did. It's like they've never actually showed up for you. Same token, if you just get married, you can only remember the great times. You can't even remember the fights. So your mind is like that as well. If you don't value yourself, you won't see ways to extract money from that value. So because I wasn't working hard enough, I was just holding myself back. So I think it's easier to charge your value if you're actually doing something valuable.
I just want to reiterate, so you went from charging
200 Rand to 15,000.
Get that big
That's awesome. That's freaking awesome.
Is that like per verse?
Yeah. Although like some clients, some are so frequent where it's like, I'm not going to charge you that.
Yeah.
Just do 3 verses. I know next month you're going to hit me up. It's so good. Relationships and networking, that's the value. Who you know matters way more than what you know.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's true.
But I wanted to jump on something Nate said earlier as well. I think a big thing is mindset, and I think if you start freelancing, you just undervalue yourself straight away. But it's also a general mindset that freelancers aren't as valuable. So it's changing that perception. So I think it's very common. I've seen it with all my friends. They undervalue, and you have to build that confidence to jump up. But a big part of it is mindset. Even what you're saying, you start off with 200 Rand, but to quickly work yourself up there, it's the amount of work you're putting in and the value you're placing.
How do you have the conversation with clients where you think it's going to be awkward when the money comes along?
It's my worst, but
You gotta rip the band-aid
you do.
I funny enough, my ex-employer told me this. Don't ever be ashamed to ask for your money, because they're not doing you a favor. They are paying you for your time, for your work, for your effort. That's your money, it's not their money. So you gotta just get into that mindset, rip the band-aid off.
And
if they say no,
speaking to people is a big thing.
It is. Communication
having
is so
your
important.
your finger on the pulse in the industry, what people are paying. I mean, I know you said you need to do more work and everything for it, but I think speaking to people, know kind of on average, and then know what you're worth, and basically.
Also, also I think as a freelancer, you need to figure out when your seasons are. I know that this time of the year I'm charging more because photographers are busy with weddings, baby showers, press releases, corporate events are the biggest. And I think it goes back to demand. If I know, for me, I'm always fully booked to the next month. So I know already in the next 2 months when it's season, I need to charge double or 3 times more because I'm definitely going to get it. They're not going to say that.
And what's when January kicks in?
January, you take what they give you. But then that depends. I was actually telling the guys outside is that what really brings value to my work is my level of customer service. Customer service brings me more clients and brings the existing ones back. Secondly, if they have a great experience, look, you don't even have to do any marketing whatsoever. Your work speaks. Your work will always speak for itself. Like you said, you can't charge 100,000 Rand for something that you can't pull off. I've seen photographers copy and paste filters on every skin tone and get paid a lot of money. And it's because they have good customer service. They kept, I'm telling you.
So you're advocating that?
I don't
So if you're going to do bad work, customer service is important.
Just be nice about it.
It's true. I told Douglas about this when he first joined the agency. I'm like to him, don't shoot with photographers that are just going to copy and paste filters and charge you the same as a professional who would have charged you an extra K more for the value that you're actually going to get. For me, my value is customer service, quality and demand. As a photographer, the higher my demand, the more my prices just go up.
Yeah, that's cool. Entrepreneurs Anonymous is proudly brought to you by Craft. Craft builds solutions for freelancers by freelancers.